usually have a pretty good voice, but we had a busy season this season, so it's a little been strained a little bit today. So, but before we get started, first I want to thank you guys for coming out in this nice New England weather we're having. And this beautiful New England weather. Who had fun this weekend with the weather? Anybody? Oh, I did. Oh, good. So before we get started, though, we just want to acknowledge the Abenaki Pennacook, located on the traditional lands and the waterways of the Abenaki, the Pennacook, and the Wabanaki people, past and present. We acknowledge and honor the gratitude of the land itself and the people who have stewarded it throughout the generations. So what are we here to talk about tonight? Well, today is February 20th. Okay. Imagine back in 1882 right now. What do you think we'd be looking at right now? We'd still be smelling smoke. You know why? Because 143 years ago, boy, February is quite the month.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, for anniversaries. Let's look at it. We have 143rd anniversary of the Great Fire of Haverhill. We have the anniversary of the blizzard of 1978, which everybody in this room remembers, right? No, there's a couple of you that wouldn't remember. I'm just being funny. And if you're into sports, it's also the 45th anniversary of the greatest hockey game ever played. The U.S. Olympic team in 1980 winning the gold medal. So February is quite a month for anniversaries. Probably think of a few others too along the way. So imagine this, you're laying at home sleeping. That's what I'm talking about, the February 20th, 22nd game when the United States beat Russia. But right now we're going to talk about the Great Fire. But I was just mentioning February's anniversaries. That's pretty much what I started with. So imagine you guys at home. And you know, you don't have much TV on, but you might be up in 1882. There's no TVs, but you might be up reading a book or something. And all of a sudden you hear these alarm bells going off all over the place. Around 11:40, and I love this one. I took this right out of the newspaper, the first line of this, so everybody knows. Around 11:40 o'clock in the evening of February 17th, 1882, Officer Weber discovered smoke coming from the E.P. Wentworth building, and with no water to put the blaze out, he sounded the steam alarm. They alert the citizens and the fire department that there was a fire in downtown Haverhill. Everybody know what the E.P. Wentworth building was?
You know where the Mexican restaurant is? No?
No. Who's gone to Mark's Deli illegally parked and gotten towed? Anybody? No. So right behind Mark's Deli, there's a lot that says private parking only. Some people go to Mark's Deli and accidentally park there, and then they realize their cars get towed. That was the E.P. Wentworth, so that's where it started. Located halfway up the north side, so between near Railroad Square, Washington Square, the fire took off. Boom. By 11:45, the fire department was on the scene. Look how quickly they got there, 5 minutes. Anybody know why?
Yeah, but it used to be on Essex Street.
Right, the fire department was on Essex Street, so the first service truck got there and went, oh, there's a fire here. But what just happened in California, anybody remember with the high winds? This was a windy, very high wind. I went back and looked at some of the old, there were 50 to 60 plus mile an hour winds when this fire broke loose. Now remember, we'll get to this later in the story, but downtown's now brick. What do you think most of those mill buildings were? Wood. And how much of those machines you think leaked oil and gasoline and other sedatives into the floor? A lot. So this made for the, as we say in another movie, The Perfect Storm.
Great Conflagration.
Yes, and it sparked. So by 11:45, the fire department they thought they had the fire under control. Between the wind, oh wait a minute, and the hose line on the steam engine blew. Uh-oh. So along with the high winds, the fire spread quickly. Soon it became a 5-alarm fire. So this is 82. Now a 5-alarm fire means we gotta get towns around us to help, right? Lawrence was called in. In 1882, the closest fire department was in downtown Lawrence, right where the police station is. And what was it around in 1882? 495. Methuen was...
Wasn't it on the corner of Lawrence and Common Street?
There was one down there too, but a little later on.
Oh,
But by the time Lawrence got here,
too late.
it was going. Methuen only had one fire station. They called Methuen it. That was located in the center of town. Lowell came. Now it takes 15 minutes if there's no, actually 30 minutes if there's no accident on 495 for me to get to Route 38 in Lowell. How long you think it took them chugging horse and buggy down 110? Drake came too, so Lowell, Drake, Newburyport and West Newbury showed up.
Didn't they come by train, Newbury and West Newbury?
There were stories of that, couldn't find any proof of it.
Yeah, oh, okay, just curious.
Yeah, there was some stories floating around years ago that some of them came by train, but there's no way they'd be able to bring the water trucks with them. Because those are horse and buggy, so I knew that was like,
A little
it's
question.
something good. But, so, you see how long it took for backup to get here. So by the time backup shows up, Lawrence Steamer 5 was dispatched and was on the scene before 1 a.m. An hour and 15 minutes after the fire started, Lawrence is on the scene. The steamer stationed itself near the river and constructed a holding the fire back. They worked the Tilton block and moved to save the east side of Washington Square, Essex Street, Merrimack Street. By Saturday morning, February 18th at 2 a.m., both sides of Washington Streets engulfed. Parts of Essex Street, Wingate Street were also engulfed with flames. And you ready for this? Flying cinders because of this wind started catching houses in Bradford on fire. So homes on the other side of the river were caught. By sunrise, downtown Haverhill looked like that.
But the fire was out?
Most of the fire was out, there were still hot spots. And up until that point, we got lucky. By sunrise, downtown Haverhill was flattened. Over 8 acres of land were destroyed. You ready for the list? 292 businesses gone. Over 4,000 jobs, because I've seen the number of 4, I've seen it at 5, I've seen it at 6, but most of the reports say 4, so I say over 4,000. 108 shoe manufacturers, 26 sole and leather, 25 shoe contractors, 25 stitching rooms, 25 heel contractors, 22 heel manufacturers, 10 leather dealers, 30 other shoe-related businesses, 5 hairdressers. Imagine what that number would be today. 3 restaurants, 3 banks, 1 drugstore, and an insurance office. Among some of the names of these businesses that were destroyed, people owned, were George Green, Eureka Company, Howland Day, Merrimack Bank, E&G Bly, Kimball Brothers, H&H Foster, Shearborn and Blaisdell, Huntington Brothers, S&L Jewett, Griffin Brothers, Gage and Johnson, L.A. Finley, J.M. Mosley, Moulton, Priest and Chase, Gale Brothers, W.L. Kimball, A&Q Pettingill, Daniel Fritz, John Pillings, J.G.S. Little, George and Company, Smiley Brothers, Kempton and Company, J.M. Sawyer, Foster, Walter Goodrich, H.H. Johnson, George Mitchell, J.M. Poor, N.S. Kimball, Endicott Arnold, E.W. Allen, Seth Mitchell, John Farrer, Moses Howe, L. Johnson, and Doris Crafts. The three banks were First National, City 5 Cent, and the Merrimack National Bank. So, we actually got lucky with this fire. We meaning I wasn't alive. But by 5 a.m. Saturday morning on the 18th, some sad news had happened. Firefighter Joseph St. Germain of Haverhill Hose and Ladder Company died when the chimney from the Noyce and Carlton buildings fell on him and crushed him to death. That's at present day 53 to 63 Wingate Street. So, down along here. And you can tell, I mean, look at the size of these chimneys. Imagine if any of these had actually fallen. So, Joseph St. Germain, he was the only one that passed away. Imagine all those firefighters fighting those buildings and one casualty.
What did they use? Did they have hydrants then?
No, they would have been pumping the water out of the river. And what you don't see here, oh, you do see it. Anyone know what this reflection is here?
Spigot River.
Not Spigot.
Little River.
Little River. Spigot River be. You don't see Little River today because of the floods of 36, wiped out the downtown, so they piped it. If you live in the old shoe factory next to the bus station, take a walk in the basement during a heavy rainstorm. The guys let me in there. You can actually hear the water in that pipe running through the basement.
Go by Maria's, you can see it, can't you?
Where?
On the edge of Maria's? You can.
That end, yes, but you can actually hear it in the basement of the assisted living place that's down
Phoenix Row.
Phoenix Row, thank you. I always forget the name of that one and I go there all the time. Phoenix Row. In the basement, the guys let me in during the Mother's Day flood because I was on the phone with one of the guys about something else and he says, hey, come down to Phoenix Row on your way home. So I did. I'm like, wow, that's quite an interesting thing you can hear down there. So they were pumping water from here and here and wherever else they could get to it. The only buildings that survived were made of brick, except on Wingate Street, the Gardner block that faces present-day Railroad Square, and two buildings next to them. Now, a lot of these buildings were wood, even though these chimney stacks are brick, because smoking fire went up there from them. If you look at this corner over here, what do you see? A wooden house. Don't ask me how that survived. They ended up tearing that down when they rebuilt.
But wasn't the wind blowing toward the river?
Correct.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the fire line there. That's why this block didn't go up, and for your sake, here's the train station and modern day Mark's Deli, and as you can see there, that's when the train ran across the street before they built the bridge. The elevated. So, and there's the train bridge today.
Yeah.
And you notice the other bridge is not seen in this one. Nope. So, let's see. Washington Street, the Currier Sanders block on Railroad Square, built in 1877, the location of the Hidden Pig today, was the only brick building to survive. That was brick. Now, just so you know, next door it says Taylor Block. If you look at the building, okay? That was a wooden building. The only thing that survived from that was the Taylor Block. So when they built the new Taylor Block out of brick, and we'll get that in a minute, they put the name back up. Rebuilding started quickly. Well, what do you expect? 292 jobs, 4,000 people out of work. So what did they do to start rebuilding? They bought every brick they could find, including the brick yards of Haverhill. Did everybody know we had brick yards in Haverhill? No. Okay. Who's familiar with Hilldale Avenue?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, the sand pits behind there, then you go up the Rosemont Street, you know where the junkyard is? That was the Haverhill brick pits. That's where they were started by Thomas Dustin back in the 1600s. So rebuilding started quickly. Plans for the buildings were drawn up in 1 week. 1 week.
Just like today, right?
1 week. But if you want a piece of history, I'd be careful. But if you like canoeing on the river, go canoe on the river. When you get downtown behind the tap and you get your canoes and you start looking, you'll find they bulldozed everything into the mighty Merrimack River.
Oh, yeah.
That's why it took
1 week.
1 week to get the plan started up. They bulldozed it into the river because the idea was, what? Into the mighty Merrimack River, flow down the big river, out to the ocean and disappear. That doesn't usually work. So plans were purchased to buy every brick in New England. And at the time it was called Savac's Brickyard on Rosemont Street. They had the clay bricks. By 1883, a year later, the whole downtown is rebuilt. Now, who remembers the bridge going out because of a flood over the Merrimack River? Downtown? No? Remember it took them 10 years to build that bridge? You lived in Haverhill in the late 90s, early 2000s?
Oh, the Como.
Como Bridge, yeah, 10 years to rebuild the bridge.
Yeah.
1 year to rebuild 8 acres. And you can see in these pictures here, and then more pictures here, there's some of the buildings being rebuilt and what they look like today. And then I'm gonna go through some of these pictures when I'm done, so. They used materials to build more fire-resistant buildings and the Queen Anne style architecture that you see. The Pillings block was the first building completed after, and it was located on Wingate Street. And there's a picture of them celebrating going back to work. So, everybody likes to, when there's tragedy, for some people to deal with it, they turn them into song or poems. Okay? So, there was actually a poem. And then I'm going to get into what the fire report said at the end. Someone had done up very nicely. The poem was written and composed by William Dyer in 1885. They put the great conflagration in perspective. We can never forget the sight so distressing to behold when Washington Street was bound in flames, a fire over it rolled. It was cold, windy night, the hour of 12 was near, when the shrill sound of a fire alarm our citizens did hear. Though some lay quiet in slumber, soon arose and found that the business portion of the town was burning to the ground. The firemen soon rushed to the spot and struggled hard to save it. On the city from destruction, a group, the grasp, our city from destruction and the grasp of Satan's wave. By the fire fiend was raging, and of course could not stay, till Heath its hand fire structures, its heap of ruins lay. It's really meant destruction as it leaped up to the sky, and those buildings full beneath like grass before the sickle. It was sad and thrilling scene to witness, I'm sure, and it set feeling of hearts both rich and poor. For the poor man from employment was thrown upon a world. For the rich man with his thousands into poverty it hurled. But still the man undaunted, who was built again with speed, while clarity lends a helping hand and those who are in need. And the day is not far distant without our city you will see the thriving business center once again. And now the end, my ditty kind friends, to you I say, bear this blow with the smile of hope, for soon it will decay and prosperity again will shine on what you may rely. Here, old Haverhill, may its name never die. And that's real interesting because what did this fire do? It destroyed an industry, correct? But it rebuilt a stronger industry. The shoe factories were more modern. And that gave way to Haverhill becoming what it was and what it became, the great shoe city, because it took a natural disaster like this, and in the cities of Lynn, Salem, where there were other fires, we're not going to get into that, and in Lawrence, with the Pemberton Mill disaster, when they rebuilt, the industry was stronger. So the shoe industry continued to grow and grow. But I'm going to read a little excerpt that was found. I found it in an old newspaper article. And then I went down to City Records and found the exact record of this. So after a fire like this, and remember there were no insurance companies like today, you know, to handle these, there was no FEMA, there was nothing. But people wanted answers. And it was getting near that time of year again. So they started making phone calls to their elected leaders. We want answers. What happened? Why did this happen? So Chief West, who was the fire chief at the time, and the fire department did a report. According to Chief West, the fire department was not well organized then. It had no modern fire apparatus, which to fight the fires of any magnitude. There were no permanent firemen, citizen and call firemen only, alike heeded the call of fire. The only permanent men employed were drivers of the 3 steam engines then in use. The drivers were often involved in other lines of work for the city. At the time of the fire, one of Haverhill's steam fire engines was at Anascape Fire Engine Works in Manchester, New Hampshire, being worked on. And an old steamer of little worth became a temporary replacement. Days before the fire, Chief West inspected the factories and that were later destroyed by the fire, including the one where the fire believed to have started. The chief had brought to the attention of the building owners and the shoe manufacturers alike the hazardous conditions where wooden doors swung back against heated stoves. Wooden doors against hot heated stoves they had fire burning in them. He ordered the wooden doors to be covered with tin. Instead of correcting the hazardous conditions, the owners instead elected to increase the insurance on their property. So some did have property insurance. What good that did. A few days before the fire, Chief West appeared before the city council to request additional fire apparatus and that the job of the old steam engine driver be made full-time so a driver could remain at the firehouse. Since the total fire loss the year before had only been $1,600, not bad.
But what was that in today's rate?
1884, $1,600. I'm not the mathematician. Any mathematical people?
You got your phone? You have a phone? I can find it out.
Yeah. That's the first time someone ever asked me that question. Oh. Yeah.
No, you don't need that.
Oh,
You got,
so,
what do you have for a search engine? You have Safari or?
yeah.
Right down the bottom, yeah. Okay.
How much?
Just guessing.
Oh. So, with only $1,600, council members were not receptive to his request. So they shot him down. In those days, there was no fire alarm system that would indicate fire or its location. Instead, the old village method of the alarm was often used citizens yelling fire and then ringing the church bells, and the local whistle was common. The home of the fire chief was at 126 Water Street, opposite of the Water Street Fire Station, which is now Market Basket Plaza. That's where the chief lived. Opposite, and that's where it also housed the Essex steam engine. So, now we know a little bit reasons behind the fire. It's real interesting, you know, when you do all this and you get it all done and you're looking at it going, wow, all that damage.
Oh, what was that year, 1884?
82. This is a 5-story brick building that was still standing after the fire. Imagine if that had fallen on somebody. That's the brick fire stack. That's the only things that actually survived were the brick stacks. To take it into more of a perspective, here's one of the old downtown maps. This area all gone. This is the only building that survived in orange. And of course,
The White House.
well, and the little White House, yeah. That's not on that one there.
Yeah.
Here's another picture of the downtown. These didn't come out that well, but they were the best that we could get. And you can come up and look at them.
Well, where is that from? Where did you find that?
Is it stereo?
Yeah. And there's some more stereo optics over here that will actually show better. And these were the trucks they would have been using. There's engine 5 from Lawrence. And then here's the engine company that was in Washington Square. And I'll pass these around.
$49,506.67.
Okay,
Hey, thank you.
thank you. So So, the year before the Great Fire, $49,000 they spent in today's money. And they're like, well, I guess we really don't need,
Those people get elected again?
today's, I did do the number in today's cost, $2 to $3 million. Actually, that was at today's cost. That was at 1880, the year of the fire, $2 to $3 million in damage. So if $1,600 is $40,000, imagine what that is today.
60 million.
Yeah. So here's the stereographs of the fire, the cleanup,
Factor 40.
some of the other pictures over there. And then luckily, there was only couple other fires in Haverhill, but not to this size. There was one building that kept burning. The last time it burnt was 1989. It's now that new building,
The new apartment.
the new apartment building with the fake front on it, looks like there's iron. And when I do the walking tour downtown, I always hit it. They're like, you're gonna break your hand, and you've been on my walking tour, it's all tin. But that building there was the last big fire in downtown Haverhill.
And it was wiped out 2 really cool stores.
Yeah,
I like those two stores. And they were cool because they had the original tin ceilings and the wood floors from when
right.
they were.
A lot of the downtown businesses still have the tin ceilings, you just can't see them.
And
Because they put sub ceilings in. Because I've worked with a few of those buildings, I know a few of the owners, and they're still tin ceilings, they just lowered them. So, all in all, this fire, what did it do? It destroyed downtown Haverhill. There's no doubt about that. A lot of people got hurt by this fire. One person died. But it rebuilt the shoe industry. And it rebuilt it to what it became. And then after World War II, obviously, the shoe story's for another day. But without this fire, does Haverhill pound out over 80 to 100,000 pairs of shoes a year with the old wooden structures. Because after these buildings were built, further down River Street, 2 newer factories were built by the early 1900s. The Chick and the Spalding. And they were down closer to Dairy Queen, where Dairy Queen used to be on River Street. So those were the newest shoe factories. So, yes, one fire started. It destroyed an industry, but it rebuilt it 10 times stronger.
So did they ever find the cause, the origin?
The origin of the fire came from the E.P. Wentworth building, and they believe it was a boiler fire. Again, remember what the chief said about the boiler doors. They were made of wood. I don't know why you would do that. And I don't even think sheet metal would have actually protected it much. Because once an amber gets between the sheet metal,
Well, even with the metal, it's only
Yeah.
gonna heat the wood.
Right.
From point of combustion.
yeah. You know, when you read some of these old reports like that, you go like this and
They
go,
had no fire safety officers.
no, and the fire safety rules. But even today, if something this tragic happened, it would take a lot longer to rebuild because you can't just dump in the river. A lot of this rebuilding in 1 year happened because of the dumping in the river. Nowadays, it took 10 years to rebuild the Como Bridge because of the sturgeon, or the dinosaurs.
Well, and it took like, what, 5 years the bridge was closed before the
Yeah.
state would even look at rebuilding it?
Correct,
It
so
was awful.
things take a lot longer today because of new EPA guidelines, preservation guidelines, where today, back then it was, we need to
safety.
rebuild.
And safety, you know.
And that's what they did, they rebuilt. Any questions? Did I bore anybody, first of all? Yes.
Tom, I've been working on an editorial, an article for Historic New England's magazine on the shoe district, the historic district, and it's going to be out in March. so you should look for it. It's really interesting what you were talking about, the fact that it was rebuilt in a year. That entire area of Washington Street was rebuilt, and Wingate was rebuilt in 1 year. There were a lot of people who said they couldn't do it. There was a lot of doubts. And the owners of these factories wanted to prove they could do it. They built it in less than a year, and they had a dinner to celebrate and some self-congratulatory dinner to pat themselves on the back, how fast it got done. So you'll see on the facades, these wonderful facades. There were two architects who did the entire reconstruction. A guy by the name of Littlefield. They were both Haverhill architects. And
Correct.
Damon.
Right.
Damon was a graduate of MIT, early graduate of MIT's architecture school, which had only been founded a few years before that. And the architecture is remarkable. I mean, and so that entire district now is a historic district, the Shoe District. And it's been beautifully restored by overseen by the Historic District Commission, and it's really remarkable. There's a lot of variety. It could have been built, because they were in a hurry to get it up. They could have just built the most utilitarian brick building, and instead they built, what they built there is architecturally significant, which is why it's a historic.
Correct. And
What I found interesting is they were so practical. They wanted the facades to look grand, so they paid for fancy bricks
Yeah.
for
in the front, right,
Right.
yeah.
And if you look at, walk down one of the alleys and look at the sides of the buildings, they're common bricks. They're
Right.
very plain, simple, because they were cheaper. And I just found that, like, we're gonna be as practical as we can, but.
At the front, we're gonna just go ahead and
At the
build
front,
beautiful.
we're gonna put front on this. We're gonna make it look
With
good.
all the pediments and the incidentals and all the fancy brick.
Yeah.
So what I found interesting was they were so proud of the fact that they got these buildings built so quickly. Most of these buildings, on the front facade, they have the date 1882. If you look closely, either up on the top,
You
the
see.
parapet, or
Right.
somewhere in the structure. They were sort of sending a message, I think, to people who said they couldn't get it done. So it's fascinating. It's and the two architects who did that, Damon was the MIT grad. He designed Historic New England's building, which they bought about, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago. There's a long linear concrete building. It's the longest. It's an 8-story long linear building. It's the longest, largest concrete shoe factory in the country. And then the Burgess building next to it, that was just a carbon copy, sister building, is similar. So Historic New England, I don't know if you know about this initiative that they are undertaking here in Haverhill, but they really are trying to stimulate a cultural district here. And invite public, stimulate the arts. It's really quite an exciting. It's something like, I don't know if you know Masmoka and North Adams, where they took over these mills that.
And Masmoka.
Masmoka, yes.
Yeah.
And it was an electrical company that went out of business, and all these people were pretty much laid off. It's one industry town. And they came in, and a guy who eventually went to the Guggenheim and did Bilbao in Spain, if you're familiar with that. But that was the same idea, to come in and create a magnet that would draw people there, that would stimulate the economy. And this is sort of built, the idea here is to do this on the same model in Haverhill. It's very exciting, and I think it's going to work.
Any other questions on the Great Fire?
Did they put in the government, okay, the municipality or whatever you want, call it. Did they change at all after the fire? And what I mean by that is, like, were there any kind of, was a building inspector hired, or any kind
Well,
of new rules
right.
on what you
When-
could or could not do.
After the Great Fire, then they started looking at things like iron doors at furnace buildings, more safety for the workers. So it not only built a more modern factory, but it built a safer factory. And it's all because of what happened here, and all because of the Chief West report after it was all done.
Okay, were there any other criminal things, like charges against anyone?
Nope, it just went down as a fire
And they all effed up at once?
and then pretty much, that's how it ended. And they just said, okay, let's look at some new rules so this doesn't happen again. Everybody got together, they rebuilt those buildings with brick and iron. You can see some of the iron in some of those buildings when you go downtown. And this area of the downtown was spotlighted on Chronicle last March. So if you want to look that up, you can. In fact, it's about a year ago this week that they actually did the interviews. And they were in, and then sometime.
Were they talking about the fire or just about the?
Just about the history of the
Yeah, that's
downtown,
what I
yeah.
remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we didn't get into the fire or anything, but I'm just saying, the rebuild of the downtown into the Queen Anne style put downtown Haverhill into a special category of historical buildings.
And also that people recognized that in the 60s, when they started knocking down on Merrimack Street and the old City Hall and everything, urban renewal, we gotta stop now. We did enough damage, stop it. And so,
Urban renewal, as far as urban renewal went in downtown, they lost the police station. They lost
City
the
Hall,
music building, which was impressive. That's where the Pentucket Bank was, no longer there at the corner of Merrimack Street, Main Street. Urban renewal as a whole, and I'm working on a talk for urban renewal for another organization, but I'll probably do it here, because it's way out, it's far enough away. Urban renewal throughout the valley was not the best standards.
It's urban removal.
Right, and some people call it urban destruction too, I've heard that. And, for example, in Lawrence, they took a post office down. Who's been in the post office on Common Street in Lawrence? I know some people come travel that way. The original post office was at the corner of Essex Street and Broadway. It was all marble. They tore it down and built the golden arches of McDonald's. Yeah, that's where McDonald's is today.
yeah,
They tore it down. The granite, the marble disappeared though.
yeah.
They don't know what happened to the marble. Right, but that's what happened throughout the whole Merrimack Valley with that urban renewal. They lost a lot of Newburgh. Everybody lost.
The Pentucket Club.
That was another beautiful building, yeah. Oh, wait a minute. The Eagle, from the old Eagle House
Hotel.
Hotel. Oh, the Eagle's right out there if you want to take a look at it on your way out the
Eagle
door.
Hotel, and one of the bedrooms from the Eagle Hotel is in the Metropolitan Museum of Art.
About New York, yeah.
It's called the Haverhill Room, and it's in the American wing.
Any other questions? Come up and look at this stuff if you'd like. There's some stereographs here that we had, the museum had blown up.
Yeah, they're cool.
So come look at these. There's pictures and information on the trucks and everything else. I want to thank everybody who showed up tonight. Thank you. Thank you. And that's going to end it. So come on up and take a look.